Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. Your host, Zen Garcia, this Momentary Zen, here on freedomslips.com, streaming out of Studio B. And I do thank those of you that have access to the chat room for joining us live, and those of you that will later come and listen to the archives. We appreciate your patronage, your fellowship, and the dialogue that you share with all of the various hosts that come to you 24/7 over both studios A and B. This evening I have as guests with me Christopher Tyreman, and those of you...
I just lost him.
Can you hear me, Chris?
He just hung up.
I can still hear you, brother, just so you know. But for the listening audience, Christopher is part of the Chronicle Project, and he's going to be joining us. He came on about 2 or 3 weeks ago and is joining me again this evening in order to speak about the book that he co-authored called The Destruction of the Sabbath. And we've been having some connection problems prior to going live, and so hopefully everything will be good and we can cover some of the details of his book, and as far as its connections to the calendar that was given to Adam by the Most High. And there's some other things we're going to also cover which are connected to and associated with the Leviticus 23 feast days and festivals, as well as how modern Christianity has been unwittingly deceived into the participation of pagan celebrations and idolatry. And so hopefully he can hear me and you can hear me clear and everything's good. So let's see. Can you hear me at all, Christopher? Oh, let me see if I can bring him in. It seems like we did lose him, so let me see if I can add him to call. Once again, I apologize. We had been having some troubles, and so seems like I lost him. Well, I hope everybody's doing well out there. We don't usually have this kind of a problem, but you know, it happens. See if we can bring him on.
Hello, please leave a message after the tone.
Hey, brother, I think I'm still connected with you, and believe you're on with us.
Hello?
Yeah, can I speak to Christopher, please?
Yep. Here you go.
Hello.
Hey, brother, are you there?
Hi. Man, what a weird set of circumstances.
Yeah, I was explaining that to the listening audience. Seems so weird, but in the meantime, while we do the first segment, I'll get you to send me a contact request through your son's Skype account so that we can be... I got it.
Yeah, I was going to say we sent one to you. Good.
Okay, great. And if you want, do you want me to see if I can go ahead and drag him into this call and see if we can make contact that way?
I'm going to head over to that computer and take all of my notes with me.
Okay, great.
It's very strange because even the photo I had in my hand just died.
Oh, that is so weird.
That is the weirdest. Somebody doesn't want this material out there.
Right, right.
Okay. Jude's got an accept on his. I'm just going to move to a different room here.
And
Which is probably good because it's 93 degrees here today. So.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, try calling.
Okay, let me find this contract.
Okay.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna try to drag him on, and if we can do it this way,
we'll
then
try it here on the. There we go. He's going to try answering here. Okay.
all right. Yeah, it actually sounds better too.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to switch it over.
Okay, and then I'll hang you up.
Okay, and I hung you up already, so don't
Okay,
feel
great.
unloved.
All right, we
Finally.
have contact. Wonderful. So what I was saying before, we had to try to get all of this together was in the process of writing my current book, it has led me to the study of the topics that you write about in the Destruction of Sabbath. And it's my opinion that the information that you wrote about in that book, as well as my own investigation of it and how it corresponds to the book that I'm currently writing, that it's very critical. And a lot of people don't believe that it's relevant at all, because supposedly we're under new covenant ever since, Christ incarnated into the flesh, his first coming. But I also tried to let them, in talking about this information, help them to understand how the festivals and the feast days, which are part of and laid out in Leviticus chapter 23, how the prophecies that are connected to those particular feast days, how the first 4 feast days and festivals were fulfilled by his first coming, but that the other 3 yet to be fulfilled, but will be with his second coming. And so how all of these things are relevant and are really critical for us to understand, and so that we can be aware of the connections to not only the Sabbath, and as we talked about the determinations of the Sabbath according to the lunar phases and God's calendar, and how all of those things are really still relevant for the followers of the Most High and Yeshua. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
One of the things that I would mention to people out there when they say we're under the new covenant, okay, that's great. But in order to run with that line of thinking, then you have to erase the use of prophecies in things like Isaiah, which talks about
Right.
In the end of days where the Sabbaths and the new moons and the people who celebrate them, those are the ones that Creator is going to bring to his holy mountain.
Right.
Now, if the new covenant says you don't have to do that, the Creator says you do have to do that, which one do you go with? Do you go with the traditional teaching, or do you go with what is written? And I guess it depends if you see Torah or the Old Testament as the Word of God or not. If it's not the Word of God, then you can make anything up you want. But if you really believe what that is, you have to bring your thinking into line with the Word, not the Word into line of our thinking.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's those are very critical points, and that's also why I think it's relevant for people to understand and know about the Leviticus 23, the 7 holy, the holy days, the feast days, and the festivals, as well as what they are connected to, and how it was that Yeshua in his first coming fulfilled. Because and people know about the crucifixion and the burial and his resurrection, but don't know how that aligns with the the Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the Day of First Fruits, the Feast of First Fruits, as well as how it was, 50 days later that the Holy Spirit came upon his apostles, fulfilling the Feast of Pentecost, and how, when the Israelites were led out of the bondage, the slavery of Egypt, how it was 50 days afterwards that they received the Torah on Mount Sinai, and how all of those things are, critical, and how even Yeshua and the apostles, that they celebrated these holy days as well.
Exactly. And people seem to, I think where the big problem comes in is we go into a church, we sit down, some guy teaches us, and we don't hold him accountable, that teaching itself accountable. And you hold it accountable by taking it back and looking at the context, and you look at the thread through the whole thing. And if that context doesn't hold up, then you have a problem. And if they say that the feasts, we don't have to observe those any longer, then you need to say, where did Jesus say that?
Right.
Because Jesus never said that. Jesus never said change Sabbath to Sunday. He never said stop doing the festivals. He never said, hey, Passover's not necessary anymore. Instead, when I die and I rise from the dead, we're going to have Easter, and I want you to completely ignore my Father's calendar, and instead, when the full moon is up, then use that instead in order to calculate Easter, because you can mess with it all you want, because there's complete forgiveness for sin. Do whatever you want, and it's all okay.
Right. Another thing that I thought was really relevant in your book was, how it is that the calendar, as given to us by the Most High, how people can realign with it just by watching, the heavens, just by seeing the phases of the moon, even if they were to get lost during a particular month, but that they could realign really easy with it just by seeing a phase of the moon, even if it was like cloudy for a week, if they lived in an area where they couldn't see it for several days, how the Most High's calendar makes it easy to realign with it. Whereas if you don't know, like if you're in prison or you can't see the heavens for a certain period of time, and then you can finally, see something of the heavens, you still don't know where you are in a Gregorian calendar, because none of that is relevant anymore. Those connections are lost to us, and how in the ancient times, the shepherds, even in rural areas where they were with their flocks and not even among other people, how they could still maintain the keeping up of the calendar just by being witness to what was going on in the heavens.
Yeah, I was more and more amazed every time I delve into the whole concept, and I myself actually go out every month to look for the new moon when it reaches its 7%, when it becomes the horn moon. But also, as you said, during the month, I can go out and uh, when it's a new moon, it's 7% lit. When I know the next Sabbath is coming, it will be that 7% past the first quarter phase, and then 7% past the mid phase where half the moon is, and then the 3/4 phase, and then the moon is just a sliver again on the other side. You know where you are in the months.
Right.
If I'm using a Gregorian calendar and I screw one day up, it's gone until
Right.
an equinox shows up 6 months later. I have no idea where you are. Whereas with this calendar that Creator put forth, as you said, you can correct every month. But I mean, you can correct mid-month. You can correct. It's an amazing construct, and it's brilliant. It also has other uh, purposes that most people don't know, and that is that with the Gregorian calendar, it's designed such so that you can see a full year ahead of time. You know what's where. You can see 50 years ahead of time if you want on the calendar, and it takes away from being in the moment and living that point of life. And we've created a society in North America where it's a destination society. I'll be happy when, I'll be okay when, and it's always future. Whereas this calendar, the word chodesh, which means to renew, using the SDH, and is translated as the time of the new moon. Every month, when you see that sliver rise in the sky, you can say to yourself, you know what? It's a time of renewal. I may have had a bad month, but from this day forward, I can renew again. And you can look up and think to yourself, and Creator's hand is right there. You can see what he has done. I mean, it creates a connection that is completely lost with the Gregorian calendar.
Right, right. And that's one of the things about our culture and our civilization is that, most people, well, a lot of people, they spend their whole day worrying about things of the past or worrying about things of the future or thinking about things that are going to happen or things that have already happened. And the whole time, the moment eludes them. It's like like even with, the way that people are wandering around through their day, glued to their different technologies, whether it's their iPhones or their computers, and never even take the time to go outside to look at the creation or be witness to it or part of it. They never, go out to watch a sunset or a sunrise or anything of that nature, and they are totally disconnected from the whole, what I call the great mystery that is going on daily around us, and are only connected to traffic in the morning, sitting at their desk, being in a cubicle behind some walls. There's usually not even windows for them to glance out at the creation. They get back in their vehicles, they're separated from the creation. And in that way, they drive back to their homes, they turn on their TVs, cook their microwave meals, and stay inside for the rest of the evening. It's like they uh, don't even have any connection at all to the natural world or to the majesty, the awesomeness that is creation, and are really, in my opinion, missing out on life um, completely, totally.
Yeah. And again, see, it's a destination society. If you live within the Hebrew concept is life is a journey. The whole point of life, and people always ask that, what is the point of life? And the answer to that question, and people aren't going to expect the answer I'm going to give, the point of life is to learn to be honorable, to learn honor, to walk in honor. And people don't understand what that means. What that means is to make to make a choice on a continuous basis, which is the right thing to do every single time, which benefits the most for the longest term. It's the easiest way to describe honor, to give something the value it deserves. And the way that our society runs right now, as you said, people are trapped in cubicles, they're trapped in cubicles, they're trapped in their home, their food's trapped in their microwave oven, and they dishonor themselves. There is no honor to their life. And when it's all said and done, it's over and there was no destination. And
Right.
you gotta stop. You gotta when new moon comes here, we have a lake just outside of town. It's not a great lake, but it's a big lake. And we go out and we watch the sunset. And I take my kids with me. And we make
Awesome.
sure on Sabbath. And it is incredible. The sunset comes and then slowly the sliver of the moon becomes visible. And it's an event, and it is you probably describe it better than me. There's something which happens. My son said to me, he's 11, he said, there is no other place to be but right here, right now.
Right. Yeah,
It
and
is incredible.
uh, well, go ahead, and then I'll comment after you.
That's basically it. You have a grasp. You go out a lot more. I it's 93 degrees here today, so I really didn't want to go outside a whole lot. I was doing some plumbing at the senior center and got that done. We have a rock show going there. So that was my commune with nature today, was explaining to people about mineral samples. So I
Right
was
on.
outside, but you spend a lot of time outside from what you told me.
Yeah, I do. I try to, whenever I'm not working on my book, I try to be outside and read. And I do my studies while I'm out there. I like to watch the roses bloom and the grass go, and I feed the birds and the hummingbirds, and I watch them all come, and all of that is just majestic to me, and
Yes.
so I feel that that sacredness, that connection to the creation, and it's awe inspiring to me, and I wish that people would connect to that more, but in this day and age where we have so much technology and people place their focus in being connected to that technology, they never really take the time to enjoy those kind of things. It's only a matter of um, in the interim of going to their vehicle to go to the store or to go back and forth to work. That will be about the extent of their connection to the natural world. And for me, that's such a sad thing, especially for myself as being a poet. I find just every moment, the connections with the creation, just so stimulating and so just awe-inspiring. I find I get my inspiration from just the simple things of life, and again, being witness to just even the birds, the yellow finches that come to eat the black
Mm,
sunflower seeds that I put out, the red cardinals, and the doves, and the hummingbirds that come to suck the sugar water from the feeders, and
huh.
watching the different
You
different.
sound like you're sitting in my backyard right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I could only, yeah, that's got to be a wonderful place if it's anything like I've been describing, because
I,
that's my front yard as well.
no, it's so weird because we have sunflowers growing through the whole backyard, and the hummingbirds have been around. The only thing we don't have is cardinals.
Uh-huh.
Oh man, now I want to be outside. People tuning in right now, they're like, "Did I get a garden show?"
Yeah, right.
Something that I want to say to people out there, if you're listening right now, because your Zen's comment is so important. I watch people and they're afraid. They've done studies now, even in Britain, and when kids have their tech taken away from them, they go through the same withdrawal symptoms that somebody on cocaine goes through.
Oh,
Same reaction to it. And what everybody's trying to do is they're trying to be connected. But what's happening is they're using a faux connection. There is no connection. The only connection you have if you're using an electronic device is it's your thumbs and the device. And then they say, well, I'm connected with people. No, you're not. You're
right.
connected to a little pad, and the little pad is typing stuff back and forth. It could be a computer program doing it. What people don't get is that there is no connection there, and they're so hungry for this connection that they're willing to do anything. But the problem is it's a faux connection, so the addiction becomes greater and greater and greater because the hole becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and they can't put it down. And the number one problem in America right now, people they labeled it as depression, but of recent studies they've shown that people are not suffering from depression, they're suffering from loneliness.
Yes.
And you need to take your device, put it down, and go to a friend's house and talk and see them and go sit outside in their backyard and for a moment take your shoes off and put your feet on the ground. That's how the Adam, the mankind, was designed to be. We were designed to be out there, not in some cubicle hidden away from Creator.
Yes, absolutely. And it's all the way that people take their 1 week of vacation a year and will disconnect, and they'll go to the beach, and they'll be with the creation then. But for myself, I find that same kind of majesty everywhere, every day, just being outside and being in connection with the sun and the skies and the clouds and the grass and the trees and just the elements. Um, and so, I could only wish that people could feel the same kind of connection that I do when I'm just among the great mystery and part of the giant family. And the way that I feel in being out there. And, I'm all for utilizing these different devices as tools to accomplish certain things because, I use the computer to get my books and things done. But when that consumes your life and you don't have anything outside of that, especially if you're not having any interaction with, people, with friends and with family, and only with you know, technology. That to me, there's something not right there, and
It's really scary.
yeah, I agree.
I,
And so
I
kids should be encouraged to go outside and not always play on their computers, or be in front of the TVs.
You can go into a restaurant and watch a table with 5 or 6 teenagers at it. None of them are talking with each other, and they're
Right?
sitting thumbs. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And if you say something to them, they think that you're like out of date.
Right.
But the problem is, 20 years from now, when the damage has been done, it's going to be too late.
Yeah, people don't know how to socialize, don't know how to talk to each other anymore. It's just like, and then all these restaurants that have are connected to Wi-Fi, all the people sitting at meals, they're all looking down at their phones. They're not even engaging each other in conversation. It's such this strange world. Hold on, Chris. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen. I have as guests with me this evening Christopher Tyreman of the Chronicle Project. Um, which reminds me, Chris, have you worked on your latest newsletter or anything in particular going on with the Chronicle Project? Any huge revelations? And then we'll go into some of the other aspects of what I want to talk about this evening.
Kind of funny, actually, when you're mentioning huge revelations. One of them, as I mentioned earlier, the idea that the whole point of life is to learn honor, came from a discovery that we made earlier this week. And what it is it's based upon the word death, because people ask, they'll write us and say, is there anything that STH has shown to prove that there's life after death? And at the time, it's like, well, there's the usual stuff that religiously we know. But what started coming to mind was that there are 2 words for death. Now, unfortunately, if you're a Hebrew scholar out there, the way I pronounce the words is going to be different because we use a different system. But the 2 words for death are mavasa, and that would be the mam, the vav, and the thava. And the other one is math. It's just 2 letters. What's interesting about it is mavath is applied when Cain dies, or people who are not godly die, they mavath. But when somebody godly dies, and I really don't want to use the term godly, but when somebody who lives their life correctly passes away, the word at the end of that was always math. And we were curious why math and not mavath. And obviously it had something to do with a difference in what happened after you died. And working with it, you'll also notice that the word moth is used with crops. The crops are moth, and we had considered that it meant to mature. So the idea was that you didn't die, but you matured. But this week, looking closer at the word and running it from some different angles, we came to the conclusion that the word means to transition. And that had some outline changes to go into what we were doing. And one of them is the Nakash, people would call it the serpent, was talking with Eve in the garden. Now, for those of you who haven't seen our work, our stuff's available on our website at thechronicleproject.org. There is no serpent talking to Eve in the garden. It is actually a person called the Nakash, which means he's the overseer of the creation. He was the guy in charge of getting all of the stuff done on the earth that Creator had planned. And he wanted to find a way to steal the planet, take authority of the planet, which he did. When he was talking with Eve, he wanted to sucker her into eating of the fruit, because it's the one thing Creator said to Adam. He said, you can eat anything that's in the garden. Don't touch the stuff from the tree of the knowledge that satisfies and causes fear. That's the actual Hebrew. It's the tree of the knowledge that causes satisfaction or fear. And the Nakash came to her and he said to her, they were talking about it, and he said, you're not allowed to eat any of this stuff, are you? And she said, no, we're allowed to eat anything except that tree. And he said to her, I'll tell you why they won't let you eat of that tree. Because they know that if you eat of that tree, that you're going to become like them. And it says in the actual Hebrew, you do not have to math in order to transition. He's saying you don't have to die in order to transition. And they know this. They're keeping this from you. So if you go and you eat that, you'll become like them, because they're trying to keep this from you. And so with this stuff in mind, it becomes very apparent with the word that it's used, that those who lead honorable lives are the ones, when you die, you don't die, you transition. The other word, mavath, means you don't transition. And to me, that's a major discovery, because we're no longer looking at death, we're looking at transition. And the question is, transition to what? Well, he said to Eve, you don't have to die in order to translate. People be like, translate to what? If you're a New Testament person, I'll give you a quote. They were saying to Jesus, the woman has seven husbands, the husbands all die. When she gets to heaven, who's she married to? He said, you don't understand. When you get to heaven, there is no giving or taking in marriage, because you have become like and they have the word angels, but it would probably be the Elohim in the original Hebrew.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing, because you don't have to think to yourself, now I'm going to die. You think to yourself, wow, I'm going to transition. That's cool. That's something to look forward to. It's not something to fear. It's something to say, wow, I better start leading an honorable life so that I can make the transition.
Right.
And I think people need to start teaching and understanding that keeping the law is the way of doing the right thing. It's a direction, it's an understanding of the way to do stuff that has the greatest end result. And that's the purpose of it. That's the purpose of eating properly. That's the purpose of don't sleep with your neighbor's wife. It's all stuff that's going to make you honorable. And those who are honorable transition.
Right. Yeah, I talk about in some of my work how that I talk about our pre-existence and how we're trying to have a return to our first estate, and that this would all be in alignment with that. Um, One other thing, you were in talking about how we're here to be honorable, and how honoring the commandments and following the commandments as they were given to us, how all I talk about how those are dharma laws, and that it helps us to manifest positively and also attract that kind of positivity. You know how people talk about that karma is um, and that one, if we can live righteously and we wish that same to our fellow neighbors and our fellow man, and deal with everybody in that manner, then that good things reflect and come back to us. They go out, magnify, and come back to us in that manner. But when we commit evil or act selfishly, you covet certain things, physical things, or things that our neighbors have, go out and steal, murder, or lie, or anything of that nature, how that kind of that energy goes out and comes back, and how people are stuck in a cycle of learning those lessons over and over because they continue to act in those kind of ways. And that, the Bible talks about reaping what you sow. And how that those kind of, because they're basically like energetic laws. It's the way that energy attracts, positive attract, all that uh, kind of works. And I speak about how we're here. You said living honorably. I call that also living prayer. That instead of just praying, sitting down to pray, and doing that, whether it's at your meals or at bedtime or when you awake in the morning, that really we should try to live that kind of state of mind, that kind of way of being, so that we can be honorable in all moments and with all of our actions, all of our behaviors, all of our thoughts, our intentions, what we wish for ourselves and for humanity. And that if we could do that, and if all of us did it, what an awesome, incredible world this would be.
Yeah, you see, and that's the purpose of Hebrew law that people don't get is if you look at how the laws are set out, they're there to mature people, to give them a guideline to show them this is the right choice, this is the honorable choice in this situation. And if you they use the word in the Bible, they use the word sin, but in Hebrew, the word isn't sin. The word is to become twisted, to become knotted. In the Greek, it's called a miss. You didn't hit the mark.
Mm-hmm.
What people need to understand is every sin, if you want to call it that, occurs out of a fear. Every sin is a direct result of fear. If you hoard, it's because you fear not having enough. If you steal, it's because you fear that you get the idea. It goes on and on. No matter what
Right.
we do, it's all fear based. And the reason fear is a negative, as you put, a negative energy. It's a negative course of action, and you need to stop. And you have to stop being afraid, and you have to turn around. You have to head another direction because there are two types of people out there. There are people, you are either a black hole, and that means everything's coming to you. It's me, my wants. I
Right.
steal, I murder. Or you're a star, and everything flows out from you. The stars go to heaven. Okay, the black holes, they cease because the black hole can never stop being a black hole. You have to choose to stop being a black hole because if you don't, you will never see transition. You can't, because can you imagine a black hole in a translated state, in the powerful state of an angelic, to have somebody that is a black hole personality? It would only get worse and worse and worse and worse. And so the only people that can transition up from the human race are the ones who have learned to be like Creator. And what is
Right.
that? Everything pours out.
Right, and I also think that it is associated to, like when the apostles asked Yeshua who amongst them was greatest, and then he, bowed and went to his knees and began to wash their feet, and to example to them that, they should, um, um, they should take care of each other and one another, and that those that were the greatest were those that were in service to humanity and to each other rather than to self. And how the two ways of being, as far as Adam and Cain, Cain was selfish, much like Lucifer, and that he was oriented in gaining and being and doing for self, whereas Adam and the priests, much like a king, Cain and his line and the royals that are connected to him by bloodline and lineage, they are all the divine right of kings, kingship, and the right to rule with impunity, and their everything for them instead of everything for the people. Whereas Adam and the Hebrew patriarchs were priests, and not kingly. They were in service to the flock, to those that followed them, that looked up to them for guidance and direction, just as Yeshua was in sacrificing himself for the sins of humanity and giving us a chance for a renewed uh, re, renewed a clean slate is what I'm saying. And so those are the two opposite ways of being, for self and then for in service to others and humanity.
Mhm. Yeah. I think if, as the listeners are sitting out there, see, a lot of times we have a very bad habit. We say, well, I'm pretty honorable. I'm a son. I give out. I put $5 in the offering thing for the Salvation Army at Christmas time. But what you need to do is you need to be a little harder on yourself. And as a given example, so we can turn it back to what we were going to talk about in the first place, when you hear something that does not match with your tradition, with what your church teaches, with what your group teaches, but it's truth, but you fight against it, that tells you right there that you have black hole potential in you. Because when you want to change things to suit your view of the world rather than changing to see the world as it is, that straight up front is your warning sign that there's something wrong in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of religious organizations right now profess to be followers of Yeshua, and yet they eat their own young. They treat their people poorly. If you don't do what they say, if you question the word that they put out, they remove you or they sanction you. And yet John said they'll know them by their love. So we need to, as you say, start really taking a perspective on how we do stuff. And one of these things is, being Jewish, I'm not super good on the New Testament. Jesus said, it is not what goes into a man's mouth that defiles him, but that which comes out of his heart.
Right.
Did I get that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what he was saying was this: it is not, by putting some pork in your mouth, you're not defiled. But the reason you put that pork in your mouth can be defiling. If you put the pork in your mouth and you didn't know that you shouldn't eat pork because Creator said it's not good for you, please stop eating pork, and you didn't know that and you ate pork, you're not defiled. But if you say, oh, Creator says that, well, I know better than him, so screw him, and I put that pork in my mouth, now I'm defiled. That's the
Mm-hmm.
difference.
Mm-hmm.
And when people hear that Sabbath is to be recognized using the moon and nothing else, and you say, well, that's not what my church teaches, that's not what I believe, that's not, and you turn and you walk away from it, there's hardness there. Your tradition is greater than the word, and that should scare you. And people refuse to recognize that, but it's becoming rampant, and it is terrifying to me because we have this form of godliness, but there is nothing inside of it.
That leads me to a question that I wanted to ask you. And then when we come back from this break, we'll go into how it was that the calendar was changed and how the whole loss of God's calendar system, how it became altered and how it became lost to, even to the Hebrew people. But Wanted to ask you about the celebration, the current celebrations of like, um, even Valentine's Day, Easter, Christmas, Halloween, all these different holidays that most mainstream Christians celebrate, and their connections, because all of them are paganized. We know that Yeshua wasn't born on December 25th, but that they celebrate his birthday on December 25th because it has association to the winter solstice, in that the sun rises again 3 days after the winter solstice, changing its course in the heavens, and the days become elongated. And because of that, they associate the 25th with Yeshua, because he rose 3 days after being put in the grave. But all of these different, Christians, mainstream Christians, honoring these particular days instead of that of the Levitical 23, chapter 23, those particular 7 feast days, holy days, festivals. What you thought about that?
Yeah, it's a good question because people will say, is it wrong to be observing that time? And the question really comes down to not are you celebrating Christmas? The question comes down to are you observing Passover? You see, if you're only observing the Christo-pagan events, and these were these events originally had Roman god names, and they were events to Roman gods, and the Christians blended with this. Tertullian in his writings really sad as he remarks about how you can't tell the difference between the Christians and the pagans, and this is back in Rome at that time period. They basically meshed the two things so that, and the church meshed it too, to make it so that everything had this guise of Christianity when it wasn't at all. It was just pagan stuff. And it was designed to take us away. In fact, they made it illegal at that time period to calculate any of the festivals and the feasts using the lunar calendar, sometimes on pain of death, but usually a heavy fine, sometimes a beating. They were not allowed to announce the feasts, and they did it on purpose to remove people from taking Creator's time and instead taking the pagan god's times. If you take the pagan's god time, then you're worshiping the pagan god. That's basically how it works. In that time period, if you worshipped on Sunday, then your god was Helios. If you worshipped on Saturday, your god was Saturn. Okay? If you worship Monday, yours was the moon god. They knew this, and they made it illegal to observe Sabbath using the scriptural calendar because they wanted to remove Christianity from Judaism. They wanted a complete separate religion so that they could control it. So I guess in answer to your question, I don't have a problem with somebody observing Valentine's Day or any of that stuff as long as you're also observing the correct times of Creator. That would be where I would leave it with people.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do agree with that, and because in my book, my current book, I wrote about this, and I talked about how, um, you know, well, we'll be right back, and then I'll finish this comment, and then we'll move on with this topic.
See?
Hold on, Chris. Welcome back, everyone. I just want to quickly remind the listening audience that Revolution Radio is the largest listener-supported commercial-free and corporate-free radio station on the planet and on the internet. And in order for us to continue coming to you in the way that we do and covering all the various topics, the esoteric aspects of reality and New World Order and biblical prophecy, ancient mysteries, and that all the various hosts cover from all angles. We do need your monetary support, and if you can, do so. Go to freedomslips.com. You can purchase any of the particular items that are there to, um, to you know, for you to support the radio network, a coffee mug or a T-shirt, and also there's various gift offerings, non-GMO seed packs, the bullet drive with all the critical emergency information, um, access to the archives so that you can download in MP3 form all the various shows from all the different hosts going back to the beginning of last year. There's many different items, or if you just want to donate through PayPal, you can do that as well. And we appreciate your support and thank you in advance for it. Um, Christopher, I wanted to. Oh, well, first, the comment that I was going to. I had talked about and wrote about in my book about how, um, Christmas gatherings, Thanksgiving gatherings, how those are huge communal events as far as families, and that oftentimes it's, uh, the celebrations of these particular days that bring families together when they otherwise might not have seen each other, or that these particular days have become family gathering days, and that I think that that's a good thing as far as families getting together and sharing meal, especially in this day and age when families don't even sit down together to share a meal anymore, and don't share that kind of time and space with each other. But that I also believe, as you said, that it's critical that we honor, recognize the the seven holy days, the feast days that are laid out in Leviticus chapter 23. And so, as a Jewish family yourself, can you talk about first how, because I don't think that it's necessary for us to sacrifice animals. I don't know if that's something that y'all do now when you celebrate, like Passover or something like that. But can you talk about how it is that your family celebrates these particular holy days? Because I talked about also that it's, I think what's more important is that we acknowledge them, recognize them, and that people can celebrate them by maybe setting up an altar, burning some candles, or some even incense or sage, or however it is that people want to honor the Most High, but that acknowledging it is what is important in my opinion. But can you talk about the particulars of that, and then we'll go into how it is that um, the God's calendar system got lost to time and history?
Um, one of the things I should mention, by the way, if people have questions as we're talking, I can't see them because I had to switch computers. So just cut in and go ahead and ask the question if people are online are sending them. One of the things that you mentioned, Thanksgiving, and as an example, boy, it all just didn't work there. Where people get together, and as you said, it's sad because there's so few of these. And the families only get together Christmas, maybe Easter, maybe Thanksgiving, and then they never see each other. The kids don't come home. It's horrible. And here, being Jewish, every Sabbath, um, it's a family day. Everybody is here, and
That's
we
awesome.
spend time with each other, and the kids are here, and everybody has family time. And I think that the coolest part of Sabbath is the fact that your family is there with you and you share with each other in this whole day. And it's the reason why families who observe Sabbath have better families. And I
Yes.
don't mean better families as in our kids are smarter than yours or anything, but because we put into our children a lot more because of Sabbath days and the other stuff, and show them how much they are loved and appreciated, and how much importance there is to family time and stuff like that. Um, they don't grow up being alone. And if I could say nothing else to families, even if you don't want to do Sabbath, pick a day and stay home with your kids and do stuff with your kids and treat your kids like they actually have some value. Because if you do the destination thing, oh, my kids should just appreciate the fact that I'm working and bringing home the bacon for them. Well, I'll
Right.
tell you, they're the ones that are going to be picking the home you go into when you're old. So you better start putting into them now, because otherwise you're going to be eating a lot of oatmeal. So there's a self-centered reason to do it right there. We celebrate the feasts, and again, they're family time. Passover is an immense family time, and extended family time, and even friends family time. Rosh Hashanah is coming up, not this Hebrew month, but the next Hebrew month. And it's a very important time. And I can let people understand, with SDH, we've been able to unravel what Rosh Hashanah what it is really about. Rosh Hashanah takes place in the next month, which will be the start of the 7th month in the Hebrew calendar. And it's originally thought to mean head of the year, but it doesn't, because the word head has a yod on the end of it, and this one doesn't, which means it means to envision. To envision, to manifest, means head. That which manifests, in vision is your head. But this word doesn't have that yod on the end of it, so it means to envision. So Rosh Hashanah, which by the way is a terrible pronunciation of the actual Hebrew, is actually the time when, as Hebrews or Jews, we stop and we envision the year. We look backwards over the last 6 months and we say, what did we do well and where did we miss the mark? Where we missed the mark, we do two things. We make plans to hit the mark for the next 6 months. You see, it's to envision the year. If we've done wrong to somebody, we go make it right. If you've taken something, you pay it back 9 times greater. You fix all of your misses. And so Creator designed Rosh Hashanah to be a time in the middle of the year where you stopped and said, hey, you know what? We don't have to screw up the whole year. Let's put on the brakes for a moment and look at it. What did we do right? Excellent. Let's do more of that. What did we do wrong? Let's fix that. And the next 6 months, let's make it a success. That kind of a celebration is honorable. And then the celebration finishes with Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. And I won't get
I
into
can see how that fits together, really well as with what you just explained.
Yeah, so you have 10 days to get it right. Then Day of Atonement shows up, and we won't go into that right now because that's a real long. I mean, we could do a show on that because that explains the Antichrist and everything else. So we will not go down there right now. But that's coming up, and you can see with the design, the feasts aren't just where you party on; they have purpose, and they're designed to teach you honor.
Yes.
Rosh Hashanah teaches you honor. Make right what you made wrong. I down Christianity, but I do down this practice. Ask Jesus for forgiveness, and it's all okay. It's not all okay. Ask Jesus for forgiveness, great. Now go and fix what you did wrong. If you stole from somebody, you go and you give it back. And I got to tell a quick story. There was a kid that I knew. I shouldn't say kid because he was in his 20s. And he'd worked at a restaurant, and he had stolen from this restaurant. And years later, he was about 25, 26, he put himself as a bondservant to Yeshua. And then he went back to that restaurant, and he took money with him. And he gave the money to the restaurant owner, told him what he did and why he was paying back. Blew the restaurant owner's mind.
Awesome.
He said, never in all of my years of doing this have I ever had someone do such an honorable thing.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Okay, so if you've done something wrong, go fix it, make it right. Don't just, put it all on Jesus and say, woo, hey, that was great, because that's not what Jesus taught. Jesus taught make it right.
Right.
Okay, did that answer the question?
Yes. That I wanted to just comment that this also, in my opinion, is connected to that the mainstream Christians thought that once saved, always saved, and that just as long as they believe in Yeshua, that they don't have to do anything else, and then like they can go out and sin. They don't have to worry about making any kind of atonement, or that they're covered because of the blood of the Lamb, that they can't lose their salvation anymore. That no matter what they do, once saved, always saved. That kind of thinking, and I don't buy into that at all either.
Very simple when somebody says stuff like that to me. I say to them, where did Jesus say that? You see, in all honesty, the only things that you should ever really be reading is what Jesus said. Because if he's your Lord, if he's your master,
Right?
then that's it. He's the one you listen to. You don't listen to other stuff. And unless he said,
Especially if it contradicts.
exactly, if he said, change the Sabbath to Sunday, that would contradict his Father's word, which
Right.
says Sabbath is going to be there forever. And it's not Sunday.
Right.
People don't get the fact, and the Catholic Church has admitted to the fact that Sunday is wholly a construct of the Catholic Church, done to make sure that Catholicism was separated from Judaism, to put complete control over the church so that people weren't following Judaism in any way. They weren't allowed to go to feasts. They weren't allowed to go on Sabbath. They separated the church. Sunday, and here's the really funny part. If I see people who are not the Catholic faith, they go with the Catholics. Oh, they worship Mary, and oh, they worship this, and oh, they're bad in all of this stuff. And we don't do that. We go back to the Bible. And I say, that's great, except you're still worshiping Sabbath on Sunday. And I
Right.
shouldn't even say that, because they're not even doing that anymore. They go to restaurants, they mow their lawn. There is no Sabbath any longer for the Christians.
Right.
It is a complete hoax. It is a complete facade to even say that Sunday's a Sabbath. When was the last time that you ever bumped into a Christian person on Sabbath and they said, I can't do that, brother. I can't go to a restaurant because it's Sabbath. I can't mow because it's Sabbath. I'm not going to drive because I have to gas up, and that would cause somebody to work, and I won't do that on Sabbath. I haven't heard that in 15 years.
Right. No, that doesn't exist.
Okay.
Let's talk about the details. Let's go into some of the history of how it got changed.
Before we get into that,
Sure.
what is the name of your new book?
I can't actually release that yet
Ah,
because it'll give away
okay.
what I'm talking about. I'll let you know off air,
Okay.
and what it's
Never
what
mind.
it's in connection with,
Oh,
because
man.
otherwise it'll give away all the details of it. Because the title will give away what the focus is, and I want to get it completed first, just so it's not out in the public yet. But go ahead.
I should mention to all the listeners out there right now, we really haven't touched on the book yet. We did last time. If you're new to this and you haven't read the book yet, if you go to our website, thechronicleproject.org, thechronicleproject.org, the book is available for free on the website. I actually just put an updated version today because we have a little more information that we didn't have before.
Awesome.
It's on the website. Click on it. There's a best-selling book on Amazon. It's free for you. It doesn't have a cover or anything because it's an ebook. It's PDF now. But just go and read it, and it will explain all of the stuff that we won't get a chance to here. But I will quickly go in. Zen, before I go into the history of the loss of Sabbath, I want to sort of tantalize people a little out there, because there'll be a lot of people out there who'll be like, Sabbath, who cares? I'm a Christian, or I'm not religious at all. I'm just listening to this program because I have nothing better to do. So what I want to do is I want to give you some information about the moon, because the moon is the central figure in this whole thing. And most people would say, well, science says that the moon is here because a Mars-sized body slammed into the Earth 4.5 billion years ago, blah, 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 made the moon. And that may be how it happened. But there are mathematical anomalies out there that people don't know. And I'd like to put this over, because these mathematical anomalies will automatically tell you that there is something going on here that's not just average. If it's okay, may I read this stuff?
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Okay. The moon and the Earth, the sun, there are specific numbers that keep showing up that is very interesting. The ratio of the Earth's diameter to the moon's diameter is 0.273. The circumference of the sun in miles is 2,730,000. Now that's an odd coincidence, as the mile is not a standard based upon any calculation other than itself. At least that's what people thought, right? But if you take 1,000 times 360 degrees, so 360 degrees in a circle, times 365.24 days in a year, it equals 131,486,400. Now, that's 131,486,400 feet. That is 40,077 kilometers. Well, the equator of the Earth, the distance around the Earth, is 40,075 kilometers. So the foot, as we thought is just a random measurement, is not a random measurement. Somebody somewhere knew the exact size of stuff, and the foot was a derivative of that, and I don't know where that came from. So sticking with the number 273.2, 273.2 degrees Celsius is the temperature of absolute zero. 27.32 Earth days is the sidereal period, or the complete orbit of the moon around the Earth. Gases expand by 1/273 of their volume for every degree on the Celsius centigrade scale. If you draw a circle inside a square, the circle's diameter is the same as the square's length. The area left over the circle does not cover is 27.32% of the total square area. 27.3 days is also the average rotation period of a sunspot. All of the numbers 273, that's just those, okay? Now, the number 1092. There are 109.2 Earth diameters across the width of the sun. There are 109.2 sun diameters between the sun and the Earth when the Earth is farthest from the sun. The circumference of the moon is 10920.8 kilometers. Is that an accident? The moon measurement in 400. The moon rotates at a speed of 400 kilometers an hour. The Earth turns 100 times faster at 40,000 kilometers per rotation. The sun is 400 times larger than the moon and 400 times further away from the Earth, making the sun and the moon appear exactly the same. The moon reflects 1/400,000th the amount of light from the sun to us. The moon's diameter is 2,160 miles. The diameter of the sun is 865,294 miles. Divide the 865.924 by the 2,160, and it equals almost exactly 400. The Earth's circumference around the meridian is 40 million meters. You're starting to see these numbers can't be random. Now, there's one very interesting. Let's see if I can get down to it. Yeah, this is really weird. The Earth rotates 366 times in a full orbit of the sun. If you divide the number 400 that we were talking about, by 366, you get the recurring 109.28. All three of those numbers show up over and over and over again regarding the Earth, Sun, Moon system. And those are just a few of them. I mean, I could bore the crap out of people by just continuing to do that. This cannot be random occurrences. It's impossible. This should then tell people out there that what we're talking about is important, because this moon, which is showing that it is not a random occurrence, but it has been placed there just like the scriptures says it was. Therefore, if the moon has been placed there, then one must from there understand that the creator who put it there has given us instructions regarding it. And this isn't just some random religion, but it is the actual Creator's instructions to us. And if he gave those instructions, they must be important. Now, most people would say, well, it's not that important to me. You should ask yourself a question then. If these instructions are so meaningless, then why has the church and the government authorities down through history done so much work to make sure that you don't know it exists and that you don't celebrate it?
Right.
And that's what people don't get.
Right.
I mean, nobody cares about, they don't go in and try to erase what the Buddhists do, but they have gone out of their way to make sure that you don't know when Sabbath is. So should we jump back in time for that then?
Yeah, well, we're almost to break, so let's do it after we get back from break. But why don't you give out your contact information and your website once more, and how people can get your book that you co-authored.
Sure. Yeah, I should, by the way, thank you for saying co-author. Brad Vornhold, I'd like to give him, without him, couldn't have done it, and without his family, could not have done it. They are the ones that unearthed the information that had been kept hidden by a specific sect, religious sect that I will not, go into, but they were actually able to bring themselves out, and they were excommunicated from their church, and I mean the church on whole, for what they did. There was a lot of news story and everything about it, but I mean what they unearthed literally could have destroyed the religious order that they were in, and they brought that information to me. And so with Brad, we were able to create this book. So it's that important that they were willing to bury it. You'll find it at thechronicleproject.org. Right on the homepage, scan down just a bit, you'll see the book, The Destruction of Sabbath, the tragic history of deception, and it's free for everyone.
All right, hold on. We'll be right back for a final segment. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. And the fact that Brad and his family were excommunicated from this one specific church is a verification of the importance of this information, and how it is that the the Jews that worship Sabbath from Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown, the Seventh Day Adventists that celebrate every Saturday as Sabbath, and the mainstream Christians which worship Sunday as Sabbath, how all of them have it wrong. And so, quickly, can you explain really fast the way that the God's calendar works as far as the determination of Sabbath, and then go into how it is that the various forces aligned against this information were able to alter or destroy it as a system for maintaining the Sabbath.
Sure. The system is really quite brilliant. It is based upon the moon, and the reason it's based upon the moon is because you have an ongoing calendation piece which can be checked monthly. Here's how it works. The cycle begins with the new moon, and the new moon is not the new moon that is the very first one you can see at the horizon. Sometimes you can see a little sliver one. It's a moon that's 7% or greater. The reason we know this is because when we restored the first chapter of Genesis, it became quite apparent that the moon was the central timepiece and the sun had nothing to do with the scriptural lunar Hebrew calendar. The third day, the day itself, means to go to, so to manifest, to display. That was the day that the moon was placed where it was, joined with the sun. And the word third or three in the Hebrew is actually a Hebrew wordplay, as I said, which means to go to manifest, to display. 72 hours later, the evening of the sixth day, the name the sixth is again a wordplay that sounds like six, but it contains more information, and it means to manifest invocation. And an invocation is an authority that is above you. So on the evening of the sixth day, something was to manifest, that would be an authority. Well, scientifically, if you look at the third day, the moon was placed in what's known as the dark of the moon, the conjunctive position between Earth and the sun, so that you could not see it. If you have anything to do with how astronomy works, 72 hours later is the first time that the whole Earth will be able to see the crescent moon, and that is the whole Earth, 72 hours later. We came to the understanding that this time period, the moon had 7% visible. Very interesting. Seventh day, 7%.
Very
And very cool. And so that tells you it's new moon. From that point, you do not hold Sabbath every 7 days. That's not what the scripture says. It says 6 days of work and then hold a Sabbath. 6 days of work and hold a Sabbath. Yes, it does come out to 7 days, but I want to be very particular that nowhere in scripture does it say to hold a Sabbath every 7 days. It says you can't go longer than 6 days without a Sabbath. Knowing this, the month starts, the first day starts with the visible crescent moon at the evening. So in other words, the end of the month, that crescent moon appears, and as soon as it's dark, that's the new day, the first of the month. Then you have 6 days of work, then another Sabbath, 6 days of work, another Sabbath. So in the Hebrew calendar, you will always have the Sabbath days fall on the 1st, the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. Then you wait for the next new moon. Now, some days the next new moon will come up the very next day, and some months there is a day in between, because the moon takes 29.53 days to make a full from one phase to the next. This added day is on the Hebrew calendar, and it is something that the Gregorian, you can't match the two. You really can't. Don't try to do it. You will go insane. You just have to observe the Hebrew calendar, and it's very important to do it as it was set up. The way that they're doing it nowadays, they're doing it every Saturday. Great, every Saturday. That means that you get 4 Sabbaths a month, except the Hebrew calendar has 5 Sabbaths a month. So we're missing a whole Sabbath. And that should be the warning bells right there that something's extremely wrong. The other thing to note is people will say, well, new moons aren't really a Sabbath. Well, when we restored chapter 1, the very first moon that appeared was called a Sabbath, and it was a new moon. And historically, more offerings were brought to the temple on new moon Sabbath than were brought on normal Sabbaths. So to the ancient Hebrews, it was more important than a standard Sabbath was, like a weekly Sabbath, as you would call it. Okay, into the history. I won't go all the way back and all the way through, because you can read most of it in the book, but because we only have limited time, I'll cover a little bit.
right.
The real problem occurred when Constantine and you know what? I'm blanking on it. 321 AD, the Council of Nicaea. There we go. Got together, and Constantine was in there with overview. Now, before the Council of Nicaea even got together to do their thing, years earlier, Constantine had already put in what was called the Sunday Law. Everybody was supposed to do their stuff on Sunday because it venerated his god, Helios, the sun god. And when the Council of Nicaea got in there, they were trying to get away from the Jewish Sabbath. And most people figure, because we're taught very poorly, that the Council of Nicaea they put the Bible together, and that's where the Bible came from. They were good people. What they actually did is they invoked laws at that time period that all of the church had to follow, which created some really divisive times in the church. And I'll get into that. So what they brought in is they wanted to completely eradicate any connections with the scriptural lunar calendar, because it wasn't working for them. It kept people Judaizing, as they called it. And they were excommunicating anybody who was actually using that to set feasts and to follow the feast and Passover. So at this time period, they brought in laws that if anyone used the Hebrew calendar to be able to check feasts and otherwise look at Sabbaths and stuff and announce those, they were punished heavily at that time period for doing it. The laws that were brought in by Constantine at that time also basically at that time severed the allowance for any Christian to ever use the scriptural lunar Hebrew calendar. But that was only within that district. 200 years afterwards in England, they were still making calculations using the Hebrew Sabbath and the Hebrew calendars. And it took the church a long time, but they finally stamped out everywhere in the world the ability to use the Hebrew calendar. They went to a lot of effort. Now, here's a really scary part. If you read in Daniel, it says that the Antichrist is going to come and he's going to change the days and the feasts and all of the scriptural Hebrew observances. He's going to change those over to his own stuff. Well, that's already been accomplished.
Yes.
The Antichrist is too late. Or that church is the Antichrist.
Right.
We only have two choices there. Well, sorry, there's a third choice. The third choice is the book of Daniel is made up and it's not real. And so that's the third choice. The only problem with that is when we ran Daniel 9:24 and that area through SDH, we were able to crack the scroll that had rolled up until and it was absolutely accurate in what it said. We have that on our website. If everybody's running over now, what does it say? And it proved that the book of Daniel is real, because our oldest copy of Daniel is about 300 BC, and the event that was shown in when we unfolded the Daniel chapter 9 section occurred in 70 and 132 AD, and it accurately predicted the size of the armies, the standard that was being carried by the Romans, the exact years that the rebellion took place. Absolutely perfect. So Daniel is real, so you can't discount it. So if Daniel says the Antichrist is going to change all of God's times, and the church has already done this, we have a problem. And that means if you're part of that church, you have to ask yourself what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Scary consideration, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But in my opinion, it fits with the whole, the Babylon, the last days revelation, that as far as the mystery Babylon and the scarlet colored woman that rides on the beast and all of that.
The seven hills.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Rome.
Right.
Yeah, how lovely. So yeah, I mean that was a quickie, but I mean that was the nail in the coffin. I mean there was stuff before then, and just to point out to people how malicious it was, the church over the next decade murdered over 100,000 Ebionites. The term Ebionite, they think it means poor ones, but it doesn't. It means followers of Father. They believed in Jesus as the Messiah. They did not believe that he was God. They believed he was who he said he was. They followed Jewish law. They kept Jewish feasts. They kept Jewish Sabbath. And they refused to stop doing that. They did not recognize Paul. They said that he was an apostate and a Greek plant. They believed that James the Just was the head of the church, Jesus' brother, and that Jerusalem was to be the head of the church. And all of this, of course, got them killed. And that's what happened to the Ebionites. Thank you, church, for killing 100,000 of your followers. Nice people.
Well, who knows how many people have been killed, over the Inquisitions. I mean, God, and there's still people being killed for aligning, as disciples of the Most High, even today. So,
What I would like to put out there, which I find very nice, is I get letters from people all over the world, and having been able to get the information even from the show that we did. I mean, you should see the number of downloads of book that came from the show that we did the last time.
Awesome.
And these people writing back and going, hey, I finally find it, I understand it, or hey, we've been following Sabbath, but we didn't know if we were correct. And it's heartening to know that there are people out there all over the place that are starting to hear the truth, and they're starting to follow it. They're not taking it anymore. They are walking away from the traditional lies, and they're accepting what's written there. And I think it's just fantastic.
Oh, I agree. And it is. People are hungry for the truth. They want to know. They want guidance as to what it really is, and they want to embrace the same traditions that Yeshua did when he was here, and the other apostles, um, and so all of that is important, and bringing it back to light. It just like with the spirit of um, the spirit being poured out on all flesh at the end of days, and how even the book of Enoch talks about how these things were being written for a remote generation, one that would be, in the distant future. And then the prophecy as far as Matthew 24 and Luke 21 and Mark 13, the blooming of the fig tree, and how that generation would be the one that sees the second coming, the return of Christ, and we're that generation. We're that final, in my opinion, we're that final generation, and we're witnessing and all of those things coming to light right now.
Yeah, you know what? Somebody actually sent me a piece from the end of Enoch, which kind of blew my mind. The piece was this, and this is going to be paraphrased. Okay, let me see this. It talked about the fact that his words, and I know Enoch's words are Creator's words, the men would come along, would distort the words, and then they would write books about it and create lies about it. But in the end, all of his words would be put back to the way that they originally were, and books would be given unto the righteous, and they would believe upon them.
Awesome.
And they sent me a letter and said, that's what you're doing with SDH.
Right.
Self-defining Hebrew is putting it back. And what was really interesting about it is the fact that when we SDH Genesis, it turned out Genesis wasn't a single book, but it was multiple books that had been put together underneath the term Genesis. And that blew my mind a bit. And I'm wondering if that's the fulfillment of that prophecy. If it is, then wow, we are really in the end.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I definitely think that is part of it. And even the one that I'm doing, the revelation that's been given to me, it's so huge, and I'm so honored to be part of what will be coming out as far as this next book. And it ties together with the work that you did in the Destruction of Sabbath, and bringing together, bringing to light again the calendar system, the ancient Hebraic calendar system, which helps people to really determine when the Sabbaths are. And also the very special significance of new moon, because in the book of Enoch, he cites multiple times how important it is to determine the chodesh and to know when this day is, and so that you can calculate all of the 4 sabbatical weeks that follow, and also all of the Leviticus 23 7 holy feast and festivals that are listed there, because I believe that they are absolutely relevant. And as we spoke about earlier, I think it's fine for families to get together and on Thanksgiving and Christmas, but if families were to gather on Passover and the celebration of the unleavened bread and the first fruits, and Pentecost and the Feast of Tabernacles and Atonement and trumpets, and these would be other reasons to gather as family and to celebrate, especially if coming to new to this knowledge. If you could explain it to your family in a way that would make them understand the importance of it, then why wouldn't they use it as a reason for to gather family and to celebrate meal and to honor and to worship in that way? I think it's it can only add to the family time and the and gatherings in that way. Go
Only
ahead.
makes your family stronger. Only makes your family stronger.
Yes.
The kids love, believe it or not, after Passover, when Passover over, then on the 15th starts the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and we have matzah and honey on it and stuff like that. The kids love that. I mean, we make good matzah here. And, it gets
That's
honey
awesome.
on it. It's fantastic. And you eat that for a whole week, and people are like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm telling you, there's nothing better than, and I mean, we cheat. And by the way, there is no way to make matzah. You don't get crazy when you read this stuff online and people are all like, you got to use cold water. And no, all it says is don't put yeast in, mix up flour and water and some oil, mix it up, fry it in a pan, bake it. Even don't bake it, it's terrible that way. Fry it in a pan with some oil, and then the family gathers around, and then there's a whole story to go with it. People don't even understand why the matzah. The matzah is so simple. These people were leaving Egypt and they needed to pack as much food as they could into a smallest area as possible. So you make all of this flat bread, you can stack it in, and away you go. That was the point of the matzah. And so when we eat this, we remember that we are sojourners, that we have left Egypt, that we have left the pressure, that we have left the bondage, and that we're now free in Creator. And it's a reminder each year, and it's a fantastic family time. Every night we have the matzah for breakfast. We have the matzah. It's people don't understand it. Some people see it as a burden, but that's because the heart's in the wrong place. It is a celebration time with Creator.
Yes. I had asked you about the particular ways that um, you honor, the different festivals. I'm assuming you're not sacrificing a lamb on Passover. Um,
The,
is-
we do eat lamb on Passover, and I'll explain why. There are specific instructions that lamb must be eaten on Passover.
yes.
The actual instructions we do have on our website, believe it or not. It took me years to get those instructions. They were so convoluted in the way that they were written in the Bible. But what you were supposed to do in the old days, you were supposed to like way earlier choose the choicest lamb, and it wasn't a lamb, by the way. It was a yearling, number one. Number two, it's not lamb, it's a flock animal, a goat or a yearling, but it's a yearling. So they put the word lamb in there and make it sound like it's a little baby sheep. It's not, it's a full grown sheep. You brought this up to the house, you fed it, you kept it there, blah, blah, blah. And then in the evening, just as the evening was begin, then the lamb was not, well, see, I did it again. That's how trained I am. The sheep was cut up, and they have in the Bible that you're supposed to roast it over the fire. No, you're not. It's the absolute opposite instructions. You're supposed to simmer it in water. They actually twisted the instructions. That only makes sense. How could babies and old people eat roasted lamb? It's impossible for them to have chewed down on that on Passover in order to get out of Egypt to get that big protein feast in. No, it is simmered. It takes about 2 hours. The meat falls off the bone, and anybody can eat it at that point. So weird how the Bible has the instructions completely opposite of what's supposed to happen. But we unraveled some of them, and they're on the website. You can find them under Passover instructions.
Interesting. Well, that's awesome. Well, hey, brother, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on to the show, and we've got 1 minute remaining, so I want to give you a chance for a final commentary. Um,
I anytime you want to do this, there is so much stuff we've uncovered with SDH. I mean, we could do, it blows my mind. I wish people, please go to the website, thechronicleproject.org, read the stuff. It will show everything.
But yeah, it happens. See if we can bring him on.
Hello. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hey, brother, I think I'm still connected with you, and believe you're on with us.
Hello?
Yeah, can I speak to Christopher, please?
Yep. Here you go.
Hello.
Hey, brother, are you there?
Hi. Man, what a weird set of circumstances.
Yeah, I was explaining that to the listening audience. Seems so weird, but in the meantime, while we do the first segment, I'll get you to send me a contact request through your son's Skype account so that we can be.
I
got it.
Yeah,
I
I was
got
going to say we sent one to you. Good.
Okay, great. And if you want, do you want me to see if I can go ahead and drag him into this call and see if we can make contact that way?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to that computer and take all of my notes with me.
Okay, great.
It's very strange because even the phone I had in my hand just died.
Oh, that is so weird.
That is the weirdest. Somebody doesn't want this material out there.
Right.
Okay. Jude's got an accept on his. I'm just going to move to a different room here.
And
it's probably good because it's 93 degrees here today. So.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, try calling.
Okay, let me find his contract.
Okay.
Okay, I've got it. All right, I'm gonna try to drag him on, and if we can do it this way, then
try it here on the. There we go. He's going to try answering here. Okay.
All right. Yeah, it actually sounds better too.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to switch it over.
Okay, and then I'll hang you up.
Okay, and I hung you up already, so don't feel unloved.
All right, we have contact. Wonderful.
Super.
So what I was saying before, we had to try to get all of this together was in the process of writing my current book, it has led me to the study of the topics that you write about in the Destruction of Sabbath. And it's my opinion that the information that you wrote about in that book, as well as my own investigation of it and how it corresponds to the book that I'm currently writing, that it's very critical. And a lot of people don't believe that it's relevant at all, because supposedly we're under new covenant ever since, Christ incarnated into the flesh, his first coming. But I also tried to let them, in talking about this information, help them to understand how the festivals and the feast days, which are part of and laid out in Levitical.
Dad, you can correct every month, but I mean, you can correct mid-month, you can correct. It's an amazing construct, and it's brilliant. It also has other purposes that most people don't know, and that is that with the Gregorian calendar, it's designed such so that you can see a full year ahead of time. You know what's where, and you can see 50 years ahead of time if you want on the calendar, and it takes away from being in the moment and living that point of life. And we've created a society in North America where it's a destination society. I'll be happy when, I'll be okay when, and it's always future. Whereas this calendar, the word chodesh, which means to renew, using the SDH, and is translated as the time of the new moon. Every month, when you see that sliver rise in the sky, you can say to yourself, you know what? It's a time of renewal. I may have had a bad month, but from this day forward, I can renew again. And you can look up and think to yourself, and Creator's hand is right there. You can see what he has done. I mean, it creates a connection that is completely lost with the Gregorian calendar.
Right, right. And that's one of the things about our culture and our civilization is that, most people, well, a lot of people, they spend their whole day worrying about things of the past or worrying about things of the future or thinking about things that are going to happen or things that have already happened. And the whole time, the moment eludes them. It's like even with, the way that people are wandering around through their day, glued to their different technologies, whether it's their iPhones or their computers, and never even take the time to go outside to look at the creation or be witness to it or part of it. They never, go out to watch a sunset or a sunrise or anything of that nature, and they are totally disconnected from the whole, what I call the great mystery that is going on daily around us, and are only connected to traffic in the morning, sitting at their desk, being in a cubicle behind some walls. There's usually not even windows for them to glance out at the creation. They get back in their vehicles, they're separated from the creation. And in that way, they drive back to their homes, they turn on their TVs, cook their microwave meals, and stay inside for the rest of the evening. It's like they don't even have any connection at all to the natural world or to the majesty, the awesomeness that is creation, and are really, in my opinion, missing out on life um, completely, totally.
Yeah. And again, see, it's a destination society. If you live within the Hebrew concept is life is a journey. The whole point of life, and and we don't hold them accountable. That teaching itself accountable, and you hold it accountable by taking it back and looking at the context, and you look at the thread through the whole thing. And if that context doesn't hold up, then you have a problem. And if they say that the feasts, we don't have to observe those any longer, then you need to say, where did Jesus say that?
Right,
Because Jesus never said that. Jesus never said change Sabbath to Sunday. He never said stop doing the festivals. He never said, hey, Passover's not necessary anymore. Instead, when I die and I rise from the dead, we're going to have Easter, and I want you to completely ignore my Father's calendar, and instead, when the full moon is up, then use that instead in order to calculate Easter, because that's, you can mess with it all you want, because there's complete forgiveness for sin. Do whatever you want, and it's all okay.
right. Another thing that I thought was really relevant in your book was how it is that the calendar, as given to us by the Most High, how people can realign with it just by watching, the heavens, just by seeing the phases of the moon. Even if they were to get lost um, during a particular month, but that they could realign really easy with it just by seeing a phase of the moon. Even if it was like cloudy for a week, if they lived in an area where they couldn't see it for several days, how the Most High's calendar makes it easy to realign with it. Whereas if you don't know, like if you're in prison or you can't see the heavens for a certain period of time, and then you can finally, see something of the heavens, you still don't know where you are in a Gregorian calendar, because none of that is relevant anymore. Those connections are lost to us, and how in the ancient times, the shepherds, even in rural areas where they were with their flocks and not even among other people, how they could still maintain the keeping up of the calendar just by being witness to what was going on in the heavens.
Yeah, I was more and more amazed every time I delve into the whole concept, and I myself actually go out every month to look for the new moon when it reaches its 7%, when it becomes the horn moon. But also, as you said, during the month, I can go out and uh, when it's a new moon, it's 7% lit. When I know the next Sabbath is coming, it will be that 7% past the first quarter phase, and then 7% past the mid phase where half the moon is, and then the three-quarter phase, and then the moon is just a sliver again on the other side. You know where you are in the months.
Right.
If I'm using a Gregorian calendar and I screw one day up, it's gone until
Right.
an equinox shows up 6 months later. I have no idea where you are. Whereas with this calendar that Creator put forth, you know, as you
Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new dispositions. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. Your host, Zen Garcia, this Momentary Zen, here on freedomslips.com, streaming out of Studio B. And I do thank those of you that have access to the chat room for joining us live, and those of you that will later come and listen to the archives. We appreciate your patronage, your fellowship, and the dialogue that you share with all of the various hosts that come to you 24/7 over both studios A and B. This evening I have as guests with me Christopher Tyreman, and those of
I
you
just lost it.
can you hear me, Chris?
I just hung up.
I can still hear you, brother, just so you know. But for the listening audience, Christopher is part of the Chronicle Project, and he's going to be joining us. He came on about 2 or 3 weeks ago and is joining me again this evening in order to speak about the book that he co-authored called The Destruction of the Sabbath. And we've been having some connection problems prior to going live, and so hopefully everything will be good and we can cover some of the details of his book, and as far as its connections to the calendar that was given to Adam by the Most High. And there's some other things we're going to also cover which are connected to and associated with the Leviticus 23 feast days and festivals, as well as how modern Christianity has been unwittingly deceived into the participation of pagan celebrations and idolatry. And so hopefully he can hear me and you can hear me clear and everything's good. So let's see. Can you hear me at all, Christopher? Oh, let me see if I can bring him in. It seems like we did lose him, so let me see if I can add him to call. Once again, I apologize. We had been having some troubles, and so seems like I lost him. Well, I hope everybody's doing well out there. We don't usually have this kind of a problem. It's chapter 23, how the prophecies that are connected to those particular feast days, how the first 4 feast days and festivals were fulfilled by his first coming, but that the other 3 yet to be fulfilled, but will be with his second coming. And so how all of these things are relevant, and are really critical for us to understand, and so that we can be aware of the connections to not only the Sabbath, and as we talked about the determinations of the Sabbath according to the lunar phases and God's calendar, and how all of those things are really still relevant for the followers of the Most High and Yeshua. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
One of the things that I would mention to people out there when they say we're under the new covenant, okay, that's great. But in order to run with that line of thinking, then you have to erase the use of prophecies in things like Isaiah, which talks about
Right.
in the end of days where the Sabbaths and the new moons and the people who celebrate them, those are the ones that Creator is going to bring to His holy mountain.
Right.
Now, if the new covenant says you don't have to do that, the Creator says you do have to do that, which one do you go with? Do you go with a traditional teaching, or do you go with what is written? And I guess it depends if you see Torah or the Old Testament as the Word of God or not. If it's not the Word of God, then you can make anything up you want. But if you really believe what that is, you have to bring your thinking into line with the Word, not the Word into line of our thinking.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's those are very critical points. And that's also why I think it's relevant for people to understand and know about the Leviticus 23, the seven holy the holy days, the feast days and the festivals, as well as what they are connected to, and how it was that Yeshua in his first coming fulfilled, because and people know about the crucifixion and the burial, and his resurrection, but don't know how that aligns with the Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the Day of First Fruits, the Feast of First Fruits, as well as how it was 50 days later that the Holy Spirit came upon his apostles, fulfilling the Feast of Pentecost, and how when the Israelites were led out of the bondage, the slavery of Egypt, how it was 50 days afterwards that they received the Torah on Mount Sinai, and how all of those things are critical, and how even Yeshua and the apostles, that they celebrated these holy days as well.
Exactly. And people seem to I think where the big problem comes in is we go into a church, we sit down, some guy teaches us.